I am 63 years old. My hands are rough from 30 years of work. My back aches every morning when I wake up. And my hair, well, what's left of it is completely white now. I am not a rich man. I am not a powerful man. I am just a father, a husband, a man who believed with every single piece of his tired heart that love is shown through action. And on one Saturday evening at exactly 7 o'clock, standing in a house that I had spent 3 weeks decorating with my own hands, I was told to go sit somewhere else. Not by a stranger, not by an enemy, by my own wife, in front of 37 people. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just turned around, and I walked away in silence. But what happened 15 minutes later, what was discovered in that house on that night, will stay with me until the last day of my life. And I need to tell you this story, because maybe someone watching this right now is going through the same thing, and they need to hear what I'm about to say. My name is Harold Eugene Mitchell. I grew up in a small town in rural Georgia, the kind of place where everybody knows your name, where neighbors still bring food when someone is sick, and where a man's word is worth more than any piece of paper. My first wife, Margaret, was the love of my life. We were married for 22 years. We had one son together, my boy, Daniel. Daniel is everything I ever hoped a child of mine could be. Honest, hardworking, kind. He became a high school history teacher. He coaches the junior baseball team on weekends. He calls me every Sunday without fail. Margaret passed away 11 years ago. Breast cancer. It was the hardest thing I have ever faced in my life. After she was gone, I spent 3 years alone. Just me and the house, me and my garden, me and my grief. Then I met Patricia. Patricia came into my life at a church potluck dinner. She laughed at something my neighbor Roy said, and her laugh was so warm and bright that it filled the whole room. She was a widow herself. She had lost her husband, Raymond, 6 years before we met, and she had a daughter, Cassandra. Cassandra was 17 at the time. Patricia and I dated for 2 years, slow and careful. I was not in a rush. At my age, you stop rushing. You start paying attention instead. I proposed to Patricia on a Sunday afternoon on my front porch. Nothing fancy, just me on one knee, holding a simple ring, asking her if she would let me spend the rest of my days loving her and taking care of her family. She said yes. She was crying. I was crying. Even old Roy next door was watching from his yard and wiping his eyes. We got married on a quiet spring morning, and that was the beginning. I want to talk about Cassandra for a moment, because she is at the center of everything. When I married Patricia, Cassandra was 19 years old. She had just finished her first year of college. She was studying nursing. She was smart, sharper than most people in the room, and she knew it. She had her mother's eyes, but her father's stubbornness. At first, Cassandra was polite with me, not warm. Not close, but polite. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she would say. "How was your day, Mr. Mitchell?" Never Harold. Always Mr. Mitchell, like I was her school principal, and not the man who had married her mother. I understood. I never pushed, I never forced anything. I told myself she lost her father. She doesn't need a replacement. She just needs time. So I gave her time. And while I was giving her time, I was also doing things, small things. When she came home from college, her first holiday break, I had repainted her bedroom the color she mentioned once in passing, a dusty sage green. She had said it while watching some home improvement show. Just one sentence. "I've always loved that color," I remembered. When her car broke down on a rainy Tuesday night, 2 states away, I was the one who drove 4 hours to get her. Patricia had a bad cold that night. I didn't tell Cassandra I was coming. I just drove. When she saw my headlights in that dark parking lot and realized it was me who came for her, she stood in the rain for a moment. Then she just said quietly, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," I said. "I wanted to." She didn't say much on the drive home, But somewhere around mile 200, she fell asleep in the passenger seat. And for a while, in the quiet of that dark highway, I just drove. And I thought to myself, this girl needs someone steady, someone who just shows up. I decided I would be that person. Over the years, slowly, things shifted. She started calling me Harold instead of Mr. Mitchell. Then one Christmas, she was 22 by then. She signed my card from Cassandra and Dad Harold. Patricia nearly fell off the couch when she saw it. I kept that card. It's still in my desk drawer. Cassandra graduated from her nursing program this past spring. 4 years of hard work, nights studying, clinical hours that left her exhausted. She passed her board exams on the first try. My son Daniel called her and said, "That's not a surprise. You were always the smartest one in the room." When Patricia and I sat down to talk about celebrating, I said, "Let's do something real, something she'll remember." Patricia agreed. At first, we decided to have the party at our house. It was big enough. We have a long back porch, a decent yard, and a dining room that can seat 12 with the extended table. I volunteered to handle the decorating, the food, and the invitations. Now, I need to be clear about something. This was my idea, my initiative, my hands, my money. I called Cassandra's nursing school friends and got a list of names from her roommate, Deja, who was happy to help. I called Patricia's sisters, Gloria and Renee, and her brother Clifton. I called some family friends. I even called Cassandra's godmother, a woman named Miss Evelyn, who lives 2 towns over, and who cried on the phone when I invited her. For 3 weeks, I worked on that party. I drove to 4 different stores to find the right colors, royal blue and gold, Cassandra's school colors. I bought balloons, a custom banner that read "Congratulations, Cassandra R. Ren BSN," a photo display board where I printed photos of her life from childhood to graduation. I borrowed extra folding tables from Roy next door. I rented an additional canopy tent for the yard because the weather forecast said it might be warm. I cooked for 2 days straight. My son Daniel drove up Friday night and helped me set up tables and string lights. He kept shaking his head and saying, "Dad, you really did all this. She deserves it." I said, "She does." He agreed. "You're a good man." I told him to stop being sentimental and help me with the tablecloths. Patricia's role was to bring Cassandra from across town, to keep her out of the house while everything was set up, and then drive her back at 7 for the surprise. Everything was in place. 37 guests in my home. The food was ready. The lights were glowing. The banner was hung. The photo board was standing at the entrance where everyone could see it. My son Daniel stood beside me at 6:55, and he looked around the room and said, "Pop, this is beautiful." I smiled. I was tired, but I was happy. 5 minutes later, headlights appeared in the driveway. The front door opened. Cassandra walked in. For a moment, just one perfect moment, she stopped completely still. She looked at the banner. She looked at the lights. She looked at the faces of 37 people who loved her, all shouting surprise at the top of their lungs. And then she burst into tears, good tears, happy tears. She covered her mouth with both hands, and her whole body shook. Her roommate Deja rushed forward and hugged her. Miss Evelyn pushed through the crowd with her arms wide open. I stood a little to the side. I didn't rush forward. I just watched. That was enough for me. Seeing her face in that moment, that was worth every ounce of effort. Cassandra eventually looked through the crowd and found me. She pointed at me and said, loud enough for people around her to hear, "You did this, didn't you, Harold? You did all of this." I just shrugged and smiled. I had help. She walked over and hugged me hard, the way you hug someone when words aren't enough. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." I patted her shoulder. "Go enjoy your party, baby girl." And she did. For about 45 minutes, everything was wonderful. People were eating. Music was playing. Someone gave a toast. Cassandra was laughing and taking pictures. Daniel was telling some story in the corner that had 3 people doubled over in laughter. And then Patricia's sister Gloria walked over to Patricia in the kitchen. I was near the doorway. I wasn't trying to listen. But the kitchen was small, and voices carry. I heard Gloria say to Patricia, in a low but firm voice, "This is your family's celebration, Patty. Why is his whole side here? Daniel's walking around like he owns the place, and Harold is acting like he's the host." There was a pause. Then Patricia said, "You're right. Let me handle it." I stood very still in that doorway. Something cold moved through my chest. I told myself, maybe I misheard. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe Patricia will set her sister straight. I walked back to the main room. I stood near the food table, making sure everything was filled and people had what they needed. That's what I do. I manage. I take care of things quietly. At exactly 7 o'clock, 1 hour into the party, Patricia walked up to me. She was smiling, but it wasn't her warm smile. It was her controlled smile, the one she uses when she's made a decision and doesn't want a scene. She leaned close and said, very quietly, "Harold, this party is for my family, my side. You and Daniel should probably sit somewhere separate, maybe on the side porch. There are chairs out there." I looked at her. I looked at the room full of people, at the tables I had set, at the banner I had hung, at the photo board I'd made with my own hands. I looked back at her. I said nothing, because what could I say? What words exist for a moment like that? I turned around and I walked away, not to the side porch. I walked through the hallway, past the coats and the shoes at the door, and I stepped outside into the dark front yard. I stood on the grass. The night air was cool. I could hear the music and the laughter through the walls of my own house. 37 people inside my home. Food I cooked on my table. Lights I strung through my own backyard. And I was standing outside in the dark. I looked up at the sky, and I did something I hadn't done in a very long time. I talked to Margaret. I said out loud, very softly, "Margaret, I hope you're watching over Daniel, because I think I made a mistake somewhere, and I'm not sure how to fix it." I don't know exactly how long I stood outside. It felt like forever. It was probably 10 minutes. Then the front door opened behind me. I thought it was Patricia coming to check on me, or Daniel. I turned around slowly. It was Cassandra. She was still in her graduation dress, royal blue, fitted, elegant. Her makeup was perfect except for 2 dark lines where her tears had run during the surprise. She was holding her phone in one hand, and her expression was something I had never seen on her face before. Fury, not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that's been building for a long time and has finally found its moment to exist. "Harold," she said, "where are you going?" "Just getting some air." I said. "Don't lie to me," she said. "I saw you leave. I saw the way she talked to you, and I heard what Aunt Gloria said in the kitchen. I was quiet." "Harold," she said, and her voice cracked slightly, "this whole party, did you plan it? Did you pay for it?" I didn't answer. "Answer me, please." "It doesn't matter who paid for it," I said. "What matters is that you have a wonderful night. Now go back inside." "No," she said. She walked toward me and stood in front of me, and she was 26 years old, and she looked exactly like the furious, heartbroken, determined woman she was. And then she said something that stopped my heart. She said, "Harold, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to me very carefully." I nodded. She took a breath. 3 years ago, she said, when I was in my 2nd year of nursing school, I almost quit. I hadn't known this. I was failing pharmacology. I was exhausted. I was broke. My financial aid check was late, and I couldn't pay rent, and I was eating peanut butter for dinner every night, and I thought, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. I called my mother and told her I was done. She stopped, swallowed. And do you know what happened next? I shook my head slowly. My mother told me to pray about it, and then she said she had to go because Gloria was calling. Her voice was completely flat when she said that. No anger, just fact. She said she'd call me back. She didn't call back that night, or the next day. The cold thing was moving through my chest again. 2 days later, Cassandra continued, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a card that said, You are stronger than this. Don't stop. I believe in you. And inside that card was $1,500 in money orders. She looked at me. I looked at the ground. I never knew who sent it, she said. I told my mother about it. She seemed surprised. She said she didn't know who it was from. She paused. But Deja saw the handwriting on the envelope. And tonight, when she was looking at the photo board you made, she grabbed my arm and she pointed at the caption labels on the photos. And she said, Cass, that's the same handwriting. The night was very quiet. Was it you? Cassandra whispered. I said nothing. Harold, was it you who sent that money? I closed my eyes. And in my silence, she had her answer. She made a sound that I can only describe as a sob that had turned into something else, into something older and deeper than a sob. She pressed both hands to her face. You saved me, she said. You saved my career. You saved my whole life. And tonight my mother told you to go sit on the side porch. We stood there together in the front yard for a while. I told her to go back inside. She refused. She said she wasn't going back without me. I told her, this is your night. Don't ruin it over this. She turned to me and said, the night is already ruined if the person who made it possible is standing in the dark outside. We were still standing there when the front door opened again. This time it was Daniel, my son, my boy. He took one look at the two of us and his jaw tightened. He had heard something inside, clearly. He stepped off the porch and walked toward us. Pop, he said, what's going on? Cassandra said, I'm handling it, Daniel. Tell me what happened, he said to me. I put my hand on his shoulder. It's fine, son, Dad, tell me. And Cassandra told him all of it. What Patricia had said, what Gloria had said, the money orders 3 years ago. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, very calmly, okay. And he turned and walked back into the house. I knew that tone. That was Daniel's teacher voice. The one he uses when a student has done something serious, and he is deciding how to address it with maximum dignity and minimum cruelty. I had heard it exactly once before, when he was coaching and a parent was rude to one of his players. I followed him inside because I did not want him to cause a scene. By the time I reached the dining room, Daniel was standing at the center of the room. He had not raised his voice. He was simply standing there with a kind of calm authority, and somehow, the way it sometimes happens with certain people, the room had gone quiet around him. Excuse me, he said, just loud enough. I need a moment. People turned. The music faded. 35 faces looked at my son. He said, I want to talk about the man who organized this party, who planned it, who paid for it, who cooked the food, hung the lights, made the photo board, and called every single one of you to invite you here tonight. He paused. That man is my father, Harold Mitchell, and 10 minutes ago he was asked to go sit on the side porch because, and I'm quoting here, this party is for my family. The room was completely silent. Gloria stiffened. Patricia looked at the floor. Daniel continued, my father doesn't talk much. He's not that kind of man. He shows love by doing things, by showing up, by driving 4 hours in the rain, by painting a bedroom the right color, by sending money orders to a struggling nursing student, and never saying a word about it. Cassandra had come inside behind me. I heard her breath catch. Daniel looked at Patricia, not with hatred, not with cruelty, just with the steady, clear gaze of a man telling the truth. Patricia, he said, my father loves you. He loves Cassandra. He's been loving this family quietly for years. And tonight, in his own home, you made him feel like a stranger. He let that sit. I think some people in this room owe my father an apology, a real one, not because it's polite, because it's right. Then Daniel walked over to me, took my arm, and said quietly, come inside, Pop, This is your home." The room was different after that. Some of the guests shifted uncomfortably. A few of the younger ones had their eyes down, clearly moved. Miss Evelyn, Cassandra's godmother, was dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Patricia's brother Clifton cleared his throat. He looked at his sisters, then he looked at me, and then he did something unexpected. He stood up from his chair. He was a big man, Clifton, wide shoulders, deep voice. He and I had never been particularly close. Cordial, yes, but not close. He said, "Harold, I owe you an apology." The room shifted again. "I've sat at your table more times than I can count," he said, "eaten your food, watched the game in your living room, and I never once asked what you needed, what you were going through. I just assumed you were fine because you never complained." He extended his hand. "I'm sorry for that." I shook his hand. I didn't trust my voice right then, so I just nodded. Then Cassandra stepped forward. She stood in the middle of the room, and I could see her working to hold herself together. She said, "I want to say something to all of you, and especially to my mother." Patricia looked up. Her expression was complicated shame, and something defensive underneath the shame. The way people look when they know they were wrong, but aren't quite ready to fully surrender to that knowledge. Cassandra said, "When Daddy Raymond died, I thought the best part of my life was over. I thought nobody would ever love me the way a father loves a daughter again. I was 17, and I was angry, and I pushed away every good thing that tried to come close." She looked at me, including Harold. She stopped. Breathed. Harold never pushed back. He never gave up. He just kept showing up, quietly, steadily, like a tree that stays standing in a storm. Her voice broke on that last word. She waited. 3 years ago, when I almost quit nursing school, I was so ashamed. I couldn't even tell my mother how bad it really was. But somehow, Harold knew, and he saved me, without being asked. Without telling anyone, without wanting credit, she turned to her mother. "Mom, do you understand what that is? Do you know how rare that is?" Patricia was crying now. Real tears, not the controlled kind. Cassandra said, "Tonight, the man who gave me back my future was told to sit on the side porch. And I need you, I need everyone in this room to understand how wrong that is." She walked over to me. She stood in front of me. She said, with a voice as steady as she could make it, "Harold, will you please take your rightful seat at the head of this table, in your house, where you belong?" There was a long silence. And then, one by one, people began to applaud. I didn't take the head of the table. That wasn't necessary. I just took my seat, a normal seat, at the table I had built with a party that I had made. But I want to tell you about Patricia. Because she is not a villain in this story. I need you to understand that. Patricia came to me an hour later, after the guests had moved to the yard, and the music had started again. She came and sat beside me on the back porch steps. She had taken off her heels. She looked older suddenly, and smaller. For a long time we just sat there. Then she said, "I don't know why I said what I said tonight. I waited. Gloria was in my ear," she said. "She's always been competitive. She never liked that I remarried. She never thought you were the right kind of man, successful enough, prominent enough." She stopped. And I listened to her when I should have listened to my own heart. I said, "Patricia, I'm not angry with you." She looked at me like she didn't believe me. "I'm not," I said. "I'm hurt. There's a difference. Anger passes. But hurt like this, it takes time to heal." I looked out at the yard. "I need you to understand something. I don't need recognition. I don't need credit. But I need respect. Every human being needs that. Even quiet ones. Maybe quiet ones most of all." She was crying again. "I'm sorry, Harold," she said. "I am so sorry." I took her hand. I held it. I said, "Then let that be enough for tonight. And tomorrow we'll talk about the rest." She put her head on my shoulder. And we sat there on those steps, two old people who had both lost someone, who had found each other, who were still figuring out what that meant, and we watched the lights I had strung glowing in the dark above the yard, and we listened to the sound of Cassandra laughing somewhere in the crowd. And I thought, this is what love really looks like. Not the easy parts, the hard parts, the staying, the forgiving, the sitting beside each other even when you are wounded. I promised you a powerful truth. Here it is. 2 weeks after the party, Cassandra came by the house on a Wednesday afternoon. She had a box under her arm. She sat at my kitchen table, and she opened the box. Inside were papers. Documents, forms. She put them on the table and slid them toward me. I looked down. They were official documents from a program at her hospital. A program that connects senior patients who don't have family nearby with nurses who volunteer to check on them regularly. She had enrolled me as a volunteer community health advisor. I looked up at her. She said, I also talked to Dr. Abrams at the hospital. I told him about you, about who you are. She paused. They're starting a new wellness program for elderly men in the county. Preventive care, check-ins, resources. They need a community liaison, someone the men will actually trust and talk to, someone humble and steady and good. I was very still. I told them I knew exactly the right person. She said, if you want it, they'll pay a small stipend, but more than that, Harold, you'd be helping men like you, men who show up for everyone else and never ask for help. I looked at those papers for a long time. Then I looked at this young woman, this daughter who was never supposed to be mine, who I had driven through rain to rescue, whose room I had painted green, whose education I had quietly saved. And I thought about how the world works, about how the things you do in secret, the love you give without expecting return, the kindness you show when no one is watching, how it comes back. Not always, not quickly, but it comes back. I said, Cassandra, are you sure about this? She looked at me the way Margaret used to look at me when I asked a question she thought was foolish. She said, Harold, you have been taking care of people your whole life. It's time to let people take care of you back. I picked up the pen. I signed, I want to talk to you now, not as Harold, as the person telling you this story. We live in a world that rewards loudness, that celebrates the person who speaks first and hardest, that notices the one who takes the credit and stands in the center of the room. But there is another kind of person, the person who drives 4 hours without being asked, who sends money orders without leaving a name, who paints a room the right color after hearing someone mention it once, who strings lights and cooks food and hangs banners, and then stands quietly at the edge of the room, making sure everyone else has what they need. These people are everywhere. They are your parents, your grandparents, the ones who worked jobs they hated to pay your tuition, the ones who never told you how hard it was, the ones who smiled and said, I'm fine, when they weren't, the ones who gave you the last of what they had and then went home and sat in the quiet and trusted that someday, somehow, you'd understand. I want to say this very clearly. Silence is not weakness. Humility is not emptiness. The people who don't demand recognition are often the ones holding the whole world together. And if there is someone in your life, a father, a stepfather, a grandfather, an uncle, a quiet man who just keeps showing up, please, don't wait for a party. Don't wait for the documents to come out. Don't wait for someone else to say the thing that needs to be said. Walk up to that person today, look them in the eyes and say, I see you, I know what you've done, and I am grateful. That's all they need. That's all any of us need. I am 63 years old. My hands are still rough. My back still aches. My hair is still white. I sit on my back porch most mornings now, before the neighborhood wakes up, with my coffee and my garden and my thoughts. Sometimes I talk to Margaret. I think she hears me. I think she's pleased. Cassandra calls me every Sunday now. Without fail, just like Daniel, 2 people, 2 phone calls, every Sunday. I didn't earn those calls by demanding them. I didn't earn them by keeping score. I earned them the only way I know how, by showing up, quietly, steadily, like a tree in a storm. Patricia and I are still working on things. Marriage is work. It always has been. But we are working on it together, which is the only way that matters. And on the wall of my kitchen, above the table where I eat my breakfast every morning, Cassandra hung a framed copy of that card I sent her 3 years ago. The one that said, "You are stronger than this. Don't stop. I believe in you." Underneath it, she added in her own handwriting in a small frame right below, "And so are you, Harold, so are you." Every morning, I look at it, and every morning I remember, the love you give in silence is never truly silent. One day, it speaks louder than anything else in the room.